Generally, when we set up the barbell, we want the J-cup or the support to be somewhere around nipple line, okay? And that's just going to make it easier for the athlete to get the bar out and to put it back after the repetition. So we've got the bar set up here. I'm going to go ahead and have the athlete get under the bar. All right, if you'll notice, I'm going to have this athlete maintain a false grip. So we're going to have the thumbs on top of the bar, and we're going to have him maintain a neutral wrist position. And we do this because that allows him to get the bar lower down on the hand, which is going to give him a lot more mobility or movement to adjust with the elbows. So the wrists are going to be straight. The closer he can bring that grip in, the better. If the athlete has some shoulder mobility issues, they may have to go a little bit wider to accommodate the low bar setup. But for this athlete, he's got good shoulder mobility. He's going to bring that in as tight as he can. But what I really want to emphasize is his neutral wrist and that thumb on top. All right, so he's going to go ahead and take that bar out of the rack. What I want the athlete to do is not so much lift the elbows up, but to squeeze them together in the back, activate the lats, and to create this shelf for this position. If you notice, in the low bar position, this bar is set up just along the spine of the scapula, so it's a little bit lower than being up here on the traps. And what this is going to do is when he goes into the squat position, it's going to allow that bar to set over the center of gravity easier. And he's going to be able to leverage not just his quads, but he's going to be able to leverage his lower back, his glutes, and his hamstrings, and his quads. More muscles, heavier lift, greater adaptation. And this is why we try to encourage athletes to perform the low bar back squat as opposed to a high bar back squat. Now, before the athlete goes into the bottom of the squat, I want to cue them to drive the knees out as wide and as fast as possible. So within the first 1/3 of the descent of the squat, I'm going to cue that athlete to drive his knees out as wide as possible and to maintain that knee position throughout the rest of the movement. All right, Tristan, let's go ahead and perform this. And drive up. And again. And hold this position. Now, notice how he's a little bit more horizontal than a normal back squat. I want him to do the work here, but I want the shoulders and the hips to move together. Ready? Go back up. And one more time. And go back up and go ahead and pull through that bar. All right, very good. Again, the low bar back squat usually allows an athlete to lift a little bit more weight because it places that bar in a better position so that they can leverage the hamstrings and the posterior chain more than just the anterior chain. Some of the problems, some of the common mistakes on a squat might be stance. A lot of athletes may not understand what their stance is, depending on their body type or the length of certain bones. So one of the things I do to help an athlete establish the right stance is I like to reverse engineer this movement. So I'm going to build a platform or a target. I'm going to have the athlete sit on it. And what I'm looking for is making sure that athlete's crease of the hip is slightly below the knee. So I've set this up this time for him. So what I'm going to have the athlete do now is set up their stance, what they believe is comfortable. Get their torso in a nice upright position. All right. And go ahead and bring your arms above your head for me. And we're going to practice coming off of this ball so that we know that this athlete can squat below parallel. All right, let's go ahead and come up and back down. And then I can have them make any adjustments to their feet. But I know that this is probably a good stance for this athlete because he's able to come off of that ball in his current stance. So let's go a little bit wider. A little bit wider. And the problem with stance is if the stance is too wide, then the athlete can't get low enough, or vice versa. If it's too narrow, that's also going to affect their ability to squat and leverage force. So let's go ahead and try to come up in this much wider stance. So you see he struggles a little bit there, and in that wide stance, he's having a little bit harder time getting below parallel. Let's bring the stance in real narrow. All right, and a lot of times with a narrow stance, they may have a problem with those knees caving in. And go ahead and try to come up out of there. You can see the knees caving in right away. So Tristan, I want you to go back to a stance that's comfortable for you. And let's practice coming off that ball a couple more times. All right, let's come back over to the rig and let's do that low bar squat one more time. Neutral wrist, false grip, low bar position over the spine of the scapula. All right, he's going to come out of that position. Brace. He's going to get into that stance, and again, what we're looking for is the hips and the shoulders to move together, and the hips to do the work. Ready and up. Good. He's not rushing to lift the chest. Let's go one more time. And drive back up, and let's go ahead and hold to that bar. For athletes that have shoulder problems, the low bar position can be really, really challenging. Even a high bar position. So if an athlete has some shoulder mobility issues or a shoulder injury that prevents them from getting in good low bar position, then we're going to have them go into a high bar position. If the high bar position is too much with that shoulder injury, then we're going to try to have them squat with a safety bar. Right, that's it.